A creature unlike any other. The silent predator. The galaxy was vast, ancient, and filled with countless species, each evolving to dominate their own worlds. Some civilizations had mastered the art of war, while others thrived in diplomacy, science, or survival. Among them were the Vorr'Zil, a race known across the galactic community as apex predators. Their species, originating from a death world covered in toxic jungles and predatory wildlife, had evolved to dominate their environment. They were feared, respected, and unrivaled in combat. Or at least, that's what they had believed. Until they encountered a creature unlike anything they had ever seen before, a human. The incident on Tinel Station. Tinel Station was a neutral ground, a hub where multiple species coexisted for trade and diplomatic relations. The Vorr'Zil rarely bothered with diplomacy, preferring to let their reputation speak for itself. But on one unassuming day, that reputation was shattered. Vorr'Zil Commander Sharvek had been patrolling the station's market district when he noticed a peculiar sight. A creature moving through the crowd, smaller than most of the species present, yet it carried itself with an unsettling ease. The Vorr'Zil had encountered humans before. They were newcomers to the galactic community, but their world had been dismissed as unremarkable. What was strange was how this human moved, not with fear, nor with submission. He walked with confidence, as if he had nothing to fear. Sharvek, towering over most species at 8 feet of raw muscle and natural armor, observed the human with a growing curiosity. The Vorr'Zil were used to seeing other species react to them with caution. They were the undisputed predators of the stars. But this human, he didn't even acknowledge them. It was an insult. The first mistake. Sharvek stepped forward, his massive bulk blocking the human's path. "You are in my way. Pray." He expected the human to show fear, to step aside, and bow his head like all others did in the presence of a Vorr'Zil. Instead, the human simply looked up at him. His expression was unreadable, but something in his gaze made the Vorr'Zil uneasy. Then, in an act of casual defiance, the human took a slow sip from the steaming cup he held in his hand. He wasn't afraid. Sharvek's instincts screamed at him. There was something deeply wrong about this moment. But the Vorr'Zil were warriors. They thrived on battle, on proving dominance. And so, Sharvek made his second mistake. He lunged at the human. A predator meets its equal. The moment Sharvek moved, everything changed. The human was fast, faster than any Vorr'Zil had ever seen. Before Sharvek could react, a fist crashed into his torso, a force so precise, so calculated that it bypassed his natural armor completely. Pain exploded through his body as he staggered backwards, stunned. But the human wasn't done. In a blur of motion, he moved in close, grabbed Sharvek's arm, and with impossible strength flipped the massive warrior over his shoulder, slamming him into the station floor with a thunderous crack. The market district fell silent. Every species in the area stopped, their eyes wide in disbelief. A Vorr'Zil, one of the galaxy's most feared warriors, had just been effortlessly thrown to the ground. The human stood over him, his expression calm. He reached down, picked up his cup of tea, and took another sip. Then, with quiet amusement, he spoke. "You talk too much." The aftermath. Sharvek had never felt such humiliation. He had battled apex predators from 100 worlds, crushed warriors in the blood pits of his homeworld, and never lost. But this human had defeated him effortlessly. Worse than the pain was the realization that this creature had held back. Had the human wanted to kill him, he would have. Sharvek knew this. Every Vorr'Zil in the galaxy would know this. And the Vorr'Zil did not take such humiliation lightly. The challenge. The Vorr'Zil High Command was in chaos. Word of the incident spread across the galactic community like wildfire. How could an apex predator be so easily defeated? It was an insult to their species, an affront to their dominance. There was only one way to restore their honor. A challenge was issued to the human race. A formal duel of champions. If humanity had warriors capable of such feats, then let them prove their strength in combat. A battle for dominance. A test of true predators. The Vorr'Zil expected humanity to refuse. Instead, they received a message. It was short, simple. Name the time and place. The gathering storm. The galaxy watches. The Vorr'Zil challenge was unprecedented. No species had ever dared to challenge the Vorr'Zil in direct combat. Their warriors were genetically engineered for battle. Their bodies evolved on one of the deadliest worlds known to the galactic community. To face them in a duel was akin to suicide. Yet, humanity had accepted without hesitation, and that terrified the rest of the galaxy. Rumors spread like wildfire. The Vorr'Zil had been humiliated. A single human had shattered their reputation as the undisputed apex predators of the cosmos. Now, the Vorr'Zil demanded retribution, and humanity was ready to deliver it. The selection of champions. In the Grand Hall of the Vorr'Zil High Council, a heated debate raged. The human caught Sharvek off guard. That was not a fair fight. One of the generals growled, slamming his fist against the stone table. It does not matter. The war leader snarled. The result remains. We were defeated, and now we must prove our dominance once more. The Vorr'Zil prided themselves on their warrior traditions. If they did not respond to this insult, it would be seen as weakness. But they also knew one thing. They could not afford to lose again. The Vorr'Zil champion. The Vorr'Zil had many great warriors. Their gladiatorial arenas had bred thousands of seasoned killers. But this duel required the best. And so they called upon Karath the Unbroken. Karath was a legend even among his own kind. He had fought in 1,000 battles. He had crushed skulls between his claws, ripped through enemy forces like a force of nature. He was the embodiment of Vorr'Zil perfection, brutal, relentless, and undefeated. When the war leader informed him of the challenge, he simply grunted. Finally, a worthy kill. Humanity's answer. The Vorr'Zil delivered their challenge to humanity, expecting hesitation, delay, perhaps even a refusal. Instead, the response came in mere minutes. It contained only one name: James Carter. The Vorr'Zil commanders scoured the galactic archives for any records of this so-called champion. They found nothing. No records of his victories, no mention of his battles. He was a ghost. This confused the Vorr'Zil. Was humanity mocking them? Sending an unknown warrior to face Karath in battle was an insult. But they were about to learn a hard lesson about humanity. The arena of blood. The duel was set to take place on Vorsec Prime, the Vorr'Zil homeworld. It was a brutal place, high gravity, toxic atmosphere, and home to predators that had survived extinction events. The arena itself was a massive circular coliseum carved into the volcanic rock of the planet. It had been the site of countless battles, where warriors fought to prove their dominance. But this duel was different. This was not just a battle between two fighters. This was a battle between species. Every major civilization in the galaxy sent observers, high-ranking officials, diplomats, military leaders. They all gathered in the stands, eager to witness history. The Vorr'Zil stood united, roaring their approval as Karath entered the arena. His enormous frame, covered in battle-scarred armor, sent shivers through the crowd. Then the human stepped forward, and the galaxy went silent. James Carter enters the arena. James Carter was not what the galaxy expected. He was not a towering, monstrous warrior like the Vorr'Zil. He was a man, a human in simple combat gear, walking with a relaxed posture, as if he wasn't about to face one of the deadliest warriors in the galaxy. He didn't roar. He didn't bare his teeth. He simply smiled. That smile unsettled the Vorr'Zil more than anything else. Karath sneered, stepping forward. "You are small," he growled. "Weak. I expected more from your kind." Carter shrugged. "You'll get what you came for." Karath flexed his claws. "I will enjoy this." Carter nodded. "Try." The duel begins. The arena master raised his hand. A deep horn boomed across the Colosseum. The fight began. Karath moved first, lunging forward with the force of a crashing starship. His massive claws lashed out, aiming to rip Carter in half. But Carter was already gone. He sidestepped effortlessly, the Vorr'Zil's claws slicing through empty air. Then he struck. A single, well-placed punch, aimed directly at Karath's ribcage. The Vorr'Zil staggered. The crowd gasped. Karath snarled, furious. No one had ever made him stumble. He charged again, unleashing a barrage of brutal attacks. Claws slicing, fists hammering the ground with enough force to crack the stone beneath them. But Carter was untouchable. He was faster, smarter, deadlier. And then, Carter stopped dodging. The moment everything changed, Karath swung his arm forward in a devastating strike, enough to shatter a tank. Carter didn't move. He caught the Vorr'Zil's wrist and broke it. The sound of Karath's bone snapping echoed through the Colosseum. The Vorr'Zil howled in pain, stumbling backward. His arm, his weapon, was useless. The galaxy watched in disbelief. This was not a warrior overwhelmed by brute strength. This was a predator. A true predator. Karath charged one final time. Carter ended it with a single strike. A direct punch to the Vorr'Zil's throat, calculated, precise, lethal. Karath collapsed. Unmoving. Silent. Defeated. The aftermath. The Vorr'Zil could not comprehend what had just happened. Their greatest warrior had been defeated in mere seconds. By a human. A species they had dismissed as weak. The silence in the arena was deafening. Then, Carter turned his back on his fallen opponent and walked away. He didn't need to roar. He didn't need to celebrate. The Vorr'Zil had been put in their place, and the galaxy had just witnessed the rise of a new apex predator. To be continued. What happens next? Will the Vorr'Zil accept their defeat, or will they seek revenge? Fear of the unknown. The silence of the apex predators. The Vorr'Zil were a proud race, forged through war and survival. They had dominated their homeworld for millennia, fought countless battles, and crushed any species that dared challenge them. And yet, for the first time in their long and violent history, they knew fear. Karath, the unbroken champion, the legend of the Vorr'Zil, lay motionless on the arena floor. A warrior who had never tasted defeat. A warrior whose very name had sent shivers down the spines of lesser species. A warrior who had just been utterly annihilated by a human. The silence in the arena was deafening. Tens of thousands of Vorr'Zil warriors stood frozen, watching as James Carter walked away from the duel without so much as a backward glance. He had won, and he knew it. But what terrified the Vorr'Zil more than their fallen champion was the way Carter won. No taunting. No battle cries, no excessive brutality, just absolute precision. Calculated strikes, efficiency. Carter hadn't fought Karath. He had dissected him, and that made the Vorr'Zil realize a chilling truth. Humans were not warriors. They were predators, a gathering of warlords. That same evening, the Vorr'Zil High Council convened. The great warlords, generals, and chieftains gathered in the Hall of Conquest, a vast, obsidian chamber lit only by the eerie glow of lava beneath the floor. They were silent. Not a single warlord spoke first, because none of them wanted to be the first to admit what they were all thinking. Until finally, war leader Zolvek broke the silence. His voice was low, controlled, but edged with something the Vorr'Zil had never felt before: doubt. What are we dealing with? A new kind of threat. General Cortan, one of their greatest strategists, stepped forward. He exhaled sharply, rubbing his claws together. A nervous tick that none of them had ever seen before. The human, James Carter, did not just fight Karath. He studied him, analyzed him. He dismantled him in mere seconds, without hesitation, without error. Another warlord, HFY, growled in frustration. That means nothing. Karath was overconfident. We should challenge the humans again. Next time, we send an entire warband. They cannot defeat us all. Corten turned to him, his yellow eyes sharp. Cannot. You say that with confidence. But tell me, Jekval, do you truly believe that? Or are you simply saying it because you refuse to acknowledge the truth? The other warlords shifted uncomfortably. They all knew the truth. If one human could do this to their champion, what could an army of them do? Corten continued, his voice grim. We have always thought of ourselves as the galaxy's apex predators. But what if we are not? No one answered, because deep down they already knew the answer. The footage analysis. Across the Vorr'Zil homeworld, scientists, analysts, and strategists pored over the battle footage. They examined every movement, every strike, every moment of the duel, and what they found shook them to their core. Karath had never stood a chance. Carter's movements had been precise, not just instinctual, but practiced. Every dodge, every block, every strike had been intentional. He knew how Karath would attack before Karath himself did. This was not luck. This was not some fluke. This was training, and it begged the question, how many more humans were like this? The message from Earth. A few days later, a communication arrived at the Vorr'Zil War Council's command chamber. It was from Earth, from humanity. A simple transmission. No threats, no demands. Just a message. A single line of text appeared on the Vorr'Zil screens, translated into their language. We are not your enemies, but if you want war, we will bring it to you. The Vorr'Zil High Council stared at the message, and for the first time in their history, they hesitated. Because in the depths of their instincts, they knew the truth. This was not a bluff. This was a promise. The fear spreads. As the news of Karath's defeat spread beyond Vorr'Zil space, the rest of the galaxy took notice. The Galactic Union, an alliance of dozens of species, had always viewed humans with mild curiosity. A developing species, interesting, but ultimately unremarkable. But now, everything changed. Humanity had beaten the Vorr'Zil. They had humiliated them. And if the Vorr'Zil, one of the most feared species in the galaxy, could be so easily outmatched, then what chance did anyone else have? A shadow of doubt crept into the minds of the galactic leaders. Had they misjudged humanity? Had they mistaken a predator for prey? And the worst question of all, if the Vorr'Zil feared them, should the rest of the galaxy fear them too?